right. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a second. My name is Rochelle Rosa. Thank you for being here. Today, I'll kind of walk you through a few exercises and a framework for understanding personal branding. I'll give you my little 5-minute spiel about who I am and what qualifies me for this, and then we'll get into the meat of the workshop. My day job is as Assistant Director of Strategic Student Communications at NYU. My career has been largely in strategic marketing communications. So branding, all sorts of different areas of the marketing world. You name it, I've probably done it or managed a team from a strategic lens. Should I put on the microphone?
Probably, yes.
Oh, hello? This is on? No? Okay.
How are these get mustard?
No, is that actually on?
No, it's
I'm not sure. It's okay.
The last few workshops have been standing here.
Oh.
So I don't know.
So there's the desk one there.
Hello?
Are you not working as well?
Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will stand right here then. Not a problem. So I can carry it? Not very far. Okay, let me start over. My name is Rochelle Rosa, and I work at NYU as the Assistant Director of Strategic Student Community. Oh, perfect. Wonderful.
Good.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So my career has been largely in strategic marketing communications.
You might just be close.
Right here? Tip it, right here. Oh, perfect, okay. So my career has been in strategic marketing communications. You name an area of marketing and I have probably managed a team from a strategic lens, whether it's email marketing, text message marketing, building websites, digital ads on Google, social media, whatever. I've touched all of it. It's a rapidly changing landscape, but for the purposes of this workshop, we're going to talk through some very basic messaging principles and frames of mind that you can have to help prevent some overwhelm as you explore other types of marketing. So also just a little bit in terms of where I have helped creative professionals. I sit on the board of PANO, which is an international filmmaking network based in New York City, but we have 6,000 members across the globe. And I sit on the board helping with some marketing communications. I help them rebrand from their previous logo to their current logo. I also recently published a book, Vicious Circle, which I have a couple copies of if you're interested later. Young adult science fiction, that I've also in the last 10 months have written, produced, and directed a short film that will be released later this fall. So I have a lot of experience helping creative professionals in different capacities with their branding, with their marketing. So I'm hoping to distill some of those trade secrets for you today. Feel free to click on the QR code. You can see a whole bunch of stuff that I have available, more about PANO, more about Vicious Circle, more about who I am in my work. The QR code will appear a couple of times, so no worries if you don't get to it right now. So we're going to go through 3 main things. What is personal branding and why does it matter for creative professionals? I'm sure we all have an understanding of the importance of it, but for the purposes of this workshop, we'll break it down, what personal branding means in the digital age. And then we'll talk about key brand messages. This is where we're going to be a little bit interactive, and I'll set aside some time for you to think through refining your brand story and developing key messages for you and your expertise. And then we'll talk about some basic principles for leveraging your brand messages for social media marketing and for other types of marketing that you may wish to pursue. Personal branding is sort of the foundational aspect that leads to other areas of marketing. So first of all, what is personal branding? I like to explain personal branding as it's all about storytelling. We're all storytellers in this room. We can all relate to the plot structure, whether it's 3-act, 5-act, or 7-act plot structure. Pick your poison. But what we're trying to do in telling your story is to answer 3 questions. Who are you? What do you do? And where are you going? And why this matters is because when you're working with working collaboratively with other creatives, and this happens for everyone. Every creative person will find themselves working with other creatives, whether you're an author working with a graphic designer for your book cover, or you're a video game developer working with, all sorts of different writers or artists or storyboarders, or you are, what are some other filmmakers writing a script and working with the tech people or whatever. So when you can accurately answer who you are, what you do, and where you're going, then you can understand how to find the right people with the right skills for the right project, right? So finding the right people means understanding who you are. Finding the right skills means understanding what you do. And then finding the right project is being able to articulate where you are going as a creative professional. And it's okay if you see this and you're like, oh my God, I don't know where I'm going. I have all these ideas. I'm multi-passionate. I have all these different hobbies. That's fine. We'll break it down. All that means is that you have multiple subplots. That's all that means. We'll break it down. It's going to be okay. So to illustrate, again, why this is kind of important to distill your personal branding into these 3 questions, is we have this situation where, let's say you're working on a short film and you need a video editor. And you have 2 candidates. Candidate A has broad experience across multiple genres and has no preference for the type of project that they're working on. They have great experience. They can do the thing. But candidate B has extensive experience in the genre of the short film that you are working on. They're able to articulate this to you. So you know that, and they also have aspirations to be a senior editor for a film studio at some point. So they have the specific skill that you need, and by partnering, collaborating together, you're helping them get to where they're going. Because you're identifying that they are the right person with the right skills, and you found at the right time. You want to make sure that when you're collaborating with people, that it is mutually exclusive or mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial collaborations. So candidate B, who can articulate that they are the type of editor that is best for your genre, and that by working together, they get more experience to help them achieve their goals, and you get the right person for the job to help you achieve your goals of finishing this short film. Does that example make sense? And you can input, you're working on a book and you need a line editor. You're working on a video game and you need a graphic designer, or a concept artist. You can switch those 2 roles anyway, and similar situation plays out. There are cases where you will have to go with candidate A because maybe candidate B is out of your price range. That happens, and that's fine. Just make sure that you articulate that in the collaboration point. So it's clear that they understand what you need from your project, and you're still giving them experience that they need to help them define where they want to go. Does that make sense? Okay. So now I'm going to introduce an exercise that I'm going to set aside some time for. This is the plot line of your story. And we're answering these 3 questions in your plot line. In the story of your life, you are the main character, as cliche as that sounds. Answer the questions. What first, in your notes app, in your journal, whatever, we're going to take about 10 minutes. Answer these 3 questions. What first inspired you? You're the main character. Say you're the hero, maybe the anti-hero. What's your origin story? What got the ball rolling for the exposition? Lay out the exposition of your story. The second question is, what have you overcome? What are the challenges that the rising climax, the rising conflict Did you have doubts? Did you have challenges? How did you get past the trials of your life to find your passion? And the third question is, where do you aspire to be? Where do you see yourself shining the most in the future? What are your biggest career or life goals? And this is where, if you have multiple passions, you can go about it a couple different ways. You are answering this question for every passion you have, and you're finding the common denominator. All the subplots will ladder up to the main plot. Does that make sense? So take about 10 minutes and answer these questions, and then maybe we'll do some discussion. And if you have any questions or need some clarification, feel free to ask.
Sorry, can I ask for my benefit? Are we talking about myself in terms of the things I'm doing now, or is that just me as a human being throughout all existence?
We're talking about you as a human being throughout all existence. What has led you to the track that you're on now? And do you feel like you're on track to where you want to be? If the answer is no, that's totally fine. Then you can take this exercise to reach back at your your inner childhood joys. Take a reflective look at what has brought you joy the most in the experiences you've had, and try to answer, how do you get back on track? How do you realign with those joys?
We didn't even make the bottom of the list.
We're at the halfway mark. Does anyone like to see an example or have any clarifying questions?
Example would be great.
An example? All right, I do have an example of my own life. So how I approach this is that what first inspired me, I've wanted to be in the book to film industry since I was in middle school. So I spent my high school and college career kind of researching and learning, communication strategy around marketing books. My concern about financial stability, I had to overcome some parental concern about financial stability. I ended up going into marketing instead of publishing. But I was working with all these companies that I was not passionate about. I have seen corporate greed, and it is dark. So I ended up, when I finally got back into a job that had a work-life balance, I was able to join PANO, which is the filmmaking network that I'm a part of and I'm a board member of. And I was able to reconnect with those childhood joys of being in the book to film pipeline. So I spent a lot of time doing things, working towards rising in the corporate ladder, and then reconnected with those childhood joys and with those childhood interests in media entertainment and relearning. So I spent a lot of time building up skills in marketing and then had to admit and go back down to like baby level and relearn a bunch of stuff about the filmmaking industry and the publishing industry as it stands now. So where I aspire to be is growing my consulting practice and continuing to publish books and produce short films and the like for indie filmmakers, connecting indie authors with indie filmmakers to help indie authors and indie filmmakers collaborate on multimedia projects, such as book to film adaptations. So that is how I've kind of answered it. I've distilled it into 3 sort of plot points to that end. It did not originally look this smooth, because if I were to tell you all the things that I did, I studied agriculture education for like 6 years and then switched to marketing. Like there's a whole lot more in between these bullet points. But at the end of the day, it boils down to, this is what I wanted to be. Because of financial stability concerns, I did not pursue that at first. I was able to reconnect, and now I'm back on track. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm here. So this is also a very big part of like me reconnecting to the things that I want to do. So like this is my first Worldcon. This is my first international speaking gig related to creative professionals and indie authors, indie filmmakers, indie video game developers. Like this is part of my story and me trying to get back on track to where I want to be. Yeah. Does that example help? Hopefully. Does anyone feel brave enough to share what they have? Yeah?
I am a textile artist.
Love.
It's more of the villain origin story because it's spite and frustration. Have you ever tried to learn a craft from a to-do book? And the first chapter is, here's all the possible supplies you could use and all the possible techniques you need to know, and it's upfront information overload, and it's not very accessible. And these skills and crafts are lost if they're not passed on every generation. So I want to be able to educate and improve accessibility to things like cross stitch and crochet and embroidery. I keep running into this ongoing like ethical conflict of I have to make a living, but I don't want to create paywall barriers. Mm-hmm. I don't want things to be inaccessible because of cost. You know, the idea of, giving sewing lessons, but then I'm having to charge $50 an hour.
Right.
So only parents and adults of means can afford to get them. So I want to be able to start selling a variety of things, like different levels of like, okay, here's tutorials that are just free, but a lot of have an online system set up to pay what you can, which has become very common. Or here's cross-stitch kits. So all the supplies and all the materials, like $15. It's really simple. It's not too expensive. And then maybe also, continue sewing lessons, locally, and hopefully be able to supplement my income enough to bring like the cost down a little bit.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That's a beautiful example of you identifying with a frustration in the craft that you want and then finding ways to lower the barrier and become the accessible gateway for others to enjoy it. That is a beautiful example. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else feel comfortable sharing, or maybe had some difficulties? Did anyone find this difficult? Yeah? Do you want to share? But it's okay if not.
Sure. You want to well? Okay. Sure. I will share what I wrote down. I'm not sure if it works, but so yeah. Where do I aspire to be? Basically, I aspire to be capable of seeing myself as a novelist and screenwriter of good quality. And the goal is to actually have my manuscript adapted to a TV series.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would like to do in the long term. I have to overcome for sure an insane amount of rejections. Like we're talking about dinosaurs of rejections. But what inspired me is I believe something that is so naive and simple that I really apply because it's when I was a kid I knew that I always wanted to write stories and from there I just ended up using paper and pen.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like your story is one of perseverance. Yeah.
You can say that.
So like, because it's a difficult industry publishing is, especially what the landscape is now. So where you want to be and where you are now, just look at it as like a staircase, you know. Every day you're making small steps to get to where you want to be. And I think even with that, there are aspects of whatever genre you're in, you can make analogies to that genre. Yeah, so like I think you have a very strong start to your path and where you want to go. Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, so this is how to tell your story. And don't be scared by the next graphic. I will walk through it. Feel free to take a picture. So when we take a look at these core messages, who you are, what you do, where you're going, the reason why I want you to develop these 3 points is because you can blend them together to help when speaking to other people in specific situations. So we're going to start with introductions. When you introduce yourself to people, and I see this happen all the time with creative professionals, they tell people either who they are, and they talk about their values and but they don't talk about what skills they bring to the table. They talk about how passionate they are about a thing, but they forget to really hone in on the skills that combined with the passion that they have to collaborate on this project or to work on this project that makes you uniquely qualified to be the person that writes about this specific genre or this specific topic, or be the one that develops this specific game. So who you are is a lot of like, these are my experiences, these are my values. What you do is the tangible skills that you bring to the table. And when you introduce yourself effectively by blending those two together, then you're more likely to land that collaboration point. And I'm using these general terms, collaboration point, because there's lots of different types of collaboration points across the industries that are represented here at the conference. So you can insert whatever situation works for your career in industry. So that is how you introduce yourself, a combination of who you are and what you do. When you want to explain to someone, let's say you get to the next point in the collaboration process, and you're hashing out, you agree to work on a project, agree to work on a project together, and you're trying to make it fit and make it comprehensive, or comprehend how this project works for both of your goals. Then you start talking about what you do and where you're going. This is the aspirational. So this is what I do, and this, you talk through your skills and how you're building the skills to get to where you're going, which is a weird thing to say. It's a weird thing to admit that there's a gap between where you are and your future. But when you are humble enough to understand the gap and willing and explain how you want the experience, Like you have the foundational experiences to apply to this new situation. And because you have the foundational skill sets that can help you navigate a new situation, it'll help you get to where you're going. Does that make sense, or is that too vague? So it's when you're working together on a project to get a book published, to get a video game developed, to get a film made, and you have all these great people around the table working on the project together, you kind of sit down and you're like, okay, this is what we all bring to the table. How does this project help each other get to where we want to go? We recognize there's a gap. Recognize the gap, embrace the gap between your present and your future, and then something great comes out of that. And that's how you frame aspirational messages. When you want to inspire, which is kind of the opposite of acknowledging the gap, it's sort of like it's being proud of the progress you've made. So who you are and like where you're going, this is the point where you inspire. When you talk about how your values are going to be the thing that motivates you to get to where you're going. I'm fiercely bullheaded. That's how I've made my way through life. I've been rejected, and lots of doors have closed. My parents didn't want me to go into publishing, but then I found a way to do it anyways. Stuff like that. It took me 3,000 job applications to get to New York City. So I'm just bullheaded in a lot of ways. And so because I'm very determined and persistent, I was able to get to this point in time. And so people have said that is inspiring to them, which is, it's being proud of where you are when you're looking to inspire others. Does that make sense? So when you're looking to aspire is acknowledging the gap, but persevering despite it, to inspire people that you're collaborating with, and to try and help morale in a project. Then you appreciate the progress you've made. And you're like, no, dang it, I belong here. And just despite the odds. So there are some other phrases that you can use to kind of elicit some of these responses and some of this way of thinking. So because I value, I have learned from my experiences, which means I can. Because I value reaching my goals and having no regrets in life, I have learned from all the experiences of being told no, that no is not the end of the world. Which means I can persevere through several different experiences. I can persevere through rejection. Do you see how that kind of weaves through all those three points? I know this is kind of a lot. This can be a little vague, but does this framework make sense? Okay. So these things, you can use frameworks and sentences that are derived from these thought points to put into pitches for financiers, to put into query letters, to put into, let's say you're looking for a grant. You can put sentences from these categories into those different types of access points, collaboration points. And this is where we're going to start putting it all together for creating your brand ecosystem. The reason why I started with brand messages is I wanted you to have a framework to be able to create content for yourself. You have to be able to effectively talk about yourself, which is something creative professionals hate doing. We hate being perceived. And it's cringy. I'm feeling myself right now, and it's cringy. But so just a few disclaimers before I get started. A lot of marketing gurus have very unsustainable advice. I will not ask you to do all the things. I will only tell you to do what is sustainable for you. You do not have to tackle every single platform all at once, especially given, AI and all sorts of different, Google was just declared a monopoly in the US, so, there's lots of different things in the technology space related to marketing and communications that are making it messy. So do not feel compelled to do all the things all at once. Pick a platform you're comfortable with. Figure out what works for you. And also, it's okay if you have seasons where you just can't be consistent. I have not posted on my YouTube channel since January. So it's okay. There will be seasons of life where you're really loving one platform over the other. And that's totally okay. Because the thing is that you're going to outlast the trends. The trends come and go, but your life persists. Does that make sense? So, when I talk about this brand ecosystem, I am talking about you being the center of all the things that communicate who you are, what you do, and where you're going. So, a lot of people love, and I have this web to kind of illustrate it, a lot of people love to start with the things that are at the bottom of the web, which is, a logo, a color palette, photography, all the things that are pretty and aesthetic. And people get, very honed in on those things. And that's a lot of the advice that people are given first, is you need to have all these things. You can't have all of these things, logo, color palette, photography, if you don't first have a website, if you don't first have some kind of content creation mechanism, whatever social media platform you have of your choice, a blog, just what I call digital real estate. These things are digital real estate. Website, social media, blog, digital real estate. I've had a personal website since 2017, rochellerosa.com, and then I have a website for my book, and I have a website for my consulting practice. Digital real estate. The longer you have a domain, the longer search engines are able to track it, and the more likely you are to be seen in search results. Again, these things, especially the website and the blog, whatever platform you use, that digital real estate will outlast any social media trend, any logo trend, any color palette photography trend. Those things are essential. If you want to start with something, I recommend starting with a website or a blog. Whatever platform is most accessible to you, on whatever your budget. If you have questions about what's best for you, feel free to talk to me afterwards. Tell me your budget, and I can give you, your comfortability with tech, I can give you some recommendations. So, all these things point back to you. And when we get to the next phase, once you have established what you're going to tackle first, you don't have to tackle it all, just pick one. If you already have these three things, great. Pick a logo or a photography or color palette to do next. If you already have, whatever you have but don't have yet, pick it and then start on it. You don't have to tackle it all at once. Pick one, start on it. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about using these core messages to create content. And again, disclaimers, social media is rapidly changing. Instagram just went from square to portrait-sized things, which is insane. Social media is just one piece of the personal branding puzzle, so please do not feel pressured to do anything, all the things. I just keep saying this disclaimer because so many marketing gurus will tell you need to do everything all at once, and I'm like, that's not sustainable. Growing your online presence takes time. I've worked with creative professionals for social media management who thought that in 6 months that they were going to go viral and have thousands and thousands of subscribers, and I'm like, no, not in this. Maybe in 2014 you could have done that in 6 months, but not in this climate. So the numbers don't matter as much anymore. There's a trend of micro influencers, so you can build a community with fewer numbers. Don't get bogged down with the numbers, because sometimes those numbers are fake. You'd be surprised at how many influencers bought their subscribers or bought their followers to try and get brand deals that are one shot and like they're not sustainable. I want to encourage you to do what is sustainable for you. So again, creating a sustainable plan, choose 1 to 2 platforms. 1 to 2 platforms that you feel like you can handle being perceived on. Create a list of content types based on your key messages. So sit with those questions, sit with those subplots to your life, and kind of list out, what are the key things that have made me who I am, and what are the key things that I am looking to do in the future, and what are the things that I need to get there, and be bold about it. Like if you so let's say that you are actively looking for collaboration. Like feel free to post about the people that you're looking to put in your corner. I'm looking for an editor. I'm looking for a graphic designer. Feel free to put that out there and talk about what that means to you in getting to your goal, because somewhere out there needs to meet your need for them to get to their goal. Does that make sense? If you want a book published, you're going to need a graphic designer. There's some graphic designer out there who needs to work with authors to get to their goal, which is like having sustainable income through helping indie authors. Consistency beats quality when it comes to trying to beat the algorithm. So the algorithm changes way too often on every social media platform. Don't bother trying to stress yourself out about it, because again, you will outlive those trends. And over time, you will find community. Over time, you will find your people. I know this seems counterintuitive when I said a couple slides ago that you don't have to be consistent, but you are consistent. Be consistent to you. And if that means being active on one platform over another in a certain season, that's okay. You're still being consistent to you. You're still putting yourself out there in a consistent manner. It just may not be consistent with that platform. Does that make sense? I want to put that caveat there because I know that sounds conflicting. And then social media should be an extension of your website and yourself. So social media, again, there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of changes. There are some social media platforms that may not be here in 5 years. There's some social media platforms that, may not be here in 2 years. We saw how fast Be Real, I don't know if Be Real came and gone. Snapchat is on its way out in certain areas, in certain demographics. Facebook is, in the US at least, is on its way out. So, social media is an extension of your website and you. A website is digital real estate that you can maintain for the long term that will outlive the social media trends and algorithms. And then I want you to take a picture of this next one. If you haven't taken a picture yet, please take a picture. Feel free to come up. It's all these content ideas. So I have all sorts of content ideas. Use it and leverage it for your personal brand messages. Some of them you may not resonate with, but it may spark, who's got, yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So take what resonates with you and, leave the rest. As my grandmother used to tell me, eat the meat, spit out the bones. So take what resonates and use this as a jumping off point to brainstorm other ideas. There are certain things that you may not feel like you're there yet, but maybe you will be. Oh wow, we are. And then we have a good 20 minutes. This is my last slide. I do have one slide left, but it's just the QR code again for anyone who wants to click on it and learn more about me. But I'm gonna, does anyone have any questions? I threw out a lot at you. Anyone have any questions? Yes. And then you, and then you. Okay.
So my question is, particularly when you are a creative who is kind of one to many, right, and you're trying to put yourself out there feel like a lot of the time it's as much around like vibe and subgenre and like around your art, not yourself. And so we've been talking a lot about like your inspiring story. How do you talk to editors? How do you find collaboration partners? That feels like a different question to like branding when it's like, I am a romantasy author who writes high heat queer fiction, or I am a horror writer who writes things with weird plants in it. How do you embrace both aspects of branding?
So you start with who you are and what you're doing. So those statements that you just made. Those are who I am, what I do. For social media and personal branding, you'd put on your website, this is the genre I'm passionate about. This is why I'm interested in this genre, and you would take pieces of that broader story and put it on social media.
So that feels a lot less about like my personal hero story and how I became wanting to write this. That seems less relevant to my audience than like the genre and the product.
Right. So.
Because I'm not always the product. Sometimes the product is the product.
Right. So, yes, because with authors especially, you have to balance, you the artist and your product. So when you're talking about, there's a way to bridge that is potentially providing like, here's how I did this, like sort of like behind the scenes. So you're featuring aspects of you as the artist as well as featuring your product. So it's like, here's my favorite coffee shops to write in, and I wrote this book in this coffee shop. This is my favorite thing. Or I read this book, Save the Cat. I'm going to use that because everyone throws that around. I read Save the Cat that helped me write this book. So it's like bridging the gap. So because one thing about authors, and to your point, a lot of authors will default to just product. Here's the book, and neglect the very real community that can be built when the readers learn more about the author.
So foster the parasocial.
Yes, yeah. You can foster the power of social through that lens.
Parasocial, not
Parasocial, yeah, parasocial. Yeah, sorry. So foster a sort of a parasocial relationship with your readers. It may not feel like it to you that that's something that they may be interested in, but someone out there may be aspiring to be where you are, and by doing that, by giving them a peek under the hood, it gives a glimpse of like how achievable it can be for them. So I would say honor your accomplishments in that regard. Honor your accomplishments. Honor the things that you did to get to where you are, and you can do that through your blog, through your website, through your social media, by both and. This is who I am. This is how I got into this genre, into this practice. And by the way, here's my book. Read it. It's great. And then I think I saw. Yeah.
I found that I was ADHD very late in life. So I thought everything I had done was wrong and I was a failure, growing up all along. And then I found I have so many things I'm interested in, so many subplots, as you said, that I'm now at a point where it's like, I can't make the decision. What am I going to focus on? Should my website cover all of the different things that I write? Should I have different websites for each of the different genres I write? Do they all have to have different colors? My colors are going to change in 3 weeks because I'm going to get bored, or I'm going to like that and I want to do that. And I can't make a decision. And I'm like I'm locked, completely locked, that I just can't make that decision, to make that jump, to build the website, to make my social media look anything other than like the complete mess that I am.
So I would say to that, because that is actually a common thing that I've heard, is that from we call it multi-passionate.
I like that phrase.
Multi-passionate, and embrace it. So for your particular instance, I would start with a personal website that basically embraces all those multiple passions, and you can have a separate page for each passion. Yeah. So you can have like there's no rule against it, because if you're talking a personal, like I have rochellerosa.com. You know, I have different tabs for different things that I do, and so to your point, you know, whatever of those passions, even, and this also gives you the ability to change it whenever you need to. So like, let's say that for the next 2 years, you're really into a particular craft, you know, quilting, let's say quilting. And you know, you are doing all these different quilting things, you start blogging about quilting, and you can have all this content on your page, and then let's say that you don't want to do that anymore. You have the prerogative to change your website, and it's your real estate. You can remake that house however you want. So I really would encourage you to embrace that multi-passionate, and then, you know, if it is sustainable for you to have multiple social media handles for different passions that you feel that you may return to, like, you know, something that may be consistent, you may have fits and spurts, but you think you'll return to, go for it. But I would highly suggest starting with a personal website and just embracing every aspect of your passions. Yeah, does that help?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely, it does. Thank you
yes.
so
And
much.
I think I saw you first, yes.
I was just wondering if you could talk about dealing with like comfort or discomfort and being perceived on some of the way that people talk on social media now.
Yeah. Yes. So I have an issue with this, and this is why I have at times been very inconsistent with social media, because I think the whole conversation around being perceived comes from a lack of being confident in like who you are and what you're doing in this moment. When you feel like there's a gap, or like, you know, there's a lot of comparison. And especially with certain platforms like TikTok, I kind of hate being perceived specifically on TikTok. Instagram's easier because Instagram, the people who follow me, I know them. The people who can see my stuff on TikTok, I have random people commenting on my stuff. And I'm like, I don't know you, and I can't tell if this comment is passive aggressive or not. So I think a lot of it just comes from the comfort level with the response to what is being posted. And how I have gotten over that at times when I've been better and more consistent. I've been posting on TikTok a lot this week. Has been just being assuring to myself that this is the season I'm in, and I should be happy and content with this season, and maybe it'll help someone else, if that makes sense. So like, that is how I've kind of overcome being perceived. Like, I'll find myself posting on a social media platform when I feel like I can get over this overwhelming feeling of what is the response to this going to be. I don't know if that helps. Yeah. So like, once you get over that, there are certain things you cannot control, which the trolls in the comments you cannot control. But there is someone somewhere who may benefit from the tips you have, from the knowledge you have, from seeing your face that may be similar, like your story may be similar to someone else's, but they haven't been able to make the jump because they haven't seen someone with a similar story to them. So it's stuff like that that helps me get over the fear of being perceived. Does that help? Okay, yes.
In the last year or two, we've seen, you know, the rise of platform decay and, you know, the concept of enshittification. When you're picking a platform and like, so my example is Etsy, right? Etsy has made itself to be like the platform for crafters, the place where you go to get handmade goods or to sell your handmade goods. And now like fees are rising, Etsy's becoming very exploitative towards the people trying to, you know, use it to make a living. It's filled with drop shipping now. But it's still like, everyone knows what Etsy is, it's the platform. But should you take that risk of using a platform where you can see the doomsday clock ticking because of its establishment, or should you go, I am gonna have to pay those switching costs, it's not worth it, I should look for somewhere else newer that I'll be able to do long term?
No, that's a big question, but I appreciate that because I have been in several conversations with other people in textiles and in more physical stuff who have had similar sentiments, especially around Etsy.
Like I could make an Etsy account today and start selling stuff, but knowing in, probably the next year I won't be able to stay there and I'd have to move everything and hope my audience, if I build one, comes with me. Is it worth that?
Right. And to that extent, from the conversations I've had with people, they are looking for other platforms. And I don't have one that jumps out at me at the top of my head that I can give you, unfortunately. But again, I think this goes back to owning your digital real estate. You can't control Etsy. You don't own Etsy, but you own your website. And I've seen a couple of other professionals moving towards paying a little extra so they on their Squarespace or their Wix so they can have their own shop on their website and managing inventory that way. And so when they go to their socials, they push people to their website and they have a shop. And that is something that they can control. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because things like Etsy and Patreon, they're falling apart.
Yeah.
So, and what do you do when those have been, kind of the many places to make a living?
Yeah. No, it's a very real question. People's incomes have started to fall apart because these larger corporations have become unsustainable. And I think I saw a question here. Yes.
I've got maybe 3 quick fire questions.
Okay.
So you talk about owning your digital real estate with a website, blog, and social media. And obviously, social media is quite separate. With the website and blog, would you recommend they be separate entities, or you have the blog within a website?
For domain authority, which is another marketing term, which is basically like search engines kind of rank a link based on like how long that thing has existed. If your blog is under a certain link, I would create a website based on whatever your blog is, and then vice versa. I would link them together. I wouldn't put your blog on a separate thing unless you already have done that. Then figure out a way to make it work. Okay. Yeah.
And then other 2 questions. Social media wise, have you got any recommendations on what the best ones to work on at the moment are in terms of building at the moment? Because obviously, it's hard to say.
TikTok is the bad place.
TikTok is a bad place.
It works.
It works. I've heard of a new one on the rise called Cara, C-A-R-A, that has come out fairly recently.
Is that the art one?
It starts.
Visual artists are flocking to it.
Yeah, visual artists are flocking to it.
It's also because
Specifically anti-AI script.
It's the anti-AI script, and I've seen that the creators of that app want other types of creators to start adopting it to also protect their work. They kind of want to be like the anti-Instagram. So I would look into that one. Instagram's doing too much all the time. Right now, I think as controversial as it is, TikTok is effective for now. Instagram's falling apart in a lot of ways, at least in the US. I don't know if it's the same in other markets. YouTube, I think, as hard as it is to become a YouTuber and like be consistent on YouTube, it has been the one that it has been consistent over the years. You may not become like because there's so many more creators on there, you may not get an income from it, but you can build a brand on it. I don't see that going away anytime soon because it's longer form content. Does that help?
Yeah, no,
Yeah. I think you saw, and then I saw one over here and then over there.
It was also related to the website blog thing. So if you don't have a website or a blog, is it better to have the 2 things together?
Ideally, so that way you can link that if they're under the same domain name, it helps with search engines because then the blog will link back to your website, so all that content stays under the same house.
Right. So there's no particular advantage. This was what I was confused by. There's no particular advantage to being like on WordPress. That doesn't help you with any rankings or anything. It's all just from the bot scraping the internet in general.
Yeah, it's from the bot scraping internet in general. So if you've had a long-standing WordPress site but no website, I would keep your WordPress blog and just link out to it from your website because that's once you move a blog from a blogger like blogger.com or something, that you've had for years, you are effectively erasing that domain authority. So just if you have a blog you've kept up for a long time, it's on a different domain that you don't own, just create a website and link to it, and like as you create new blog posts, make sure that you link those blog posts to your website to start helping search engines associate those two together. And then I think I saw one over here.
No, me.
No? Okay, yes.
Going back to the who I am, where I'm going thing, how big and grandiose can that be? Because we write comedy together, and I would ultimately like to win the big prize, which is in the US, it's the Everyman Woodhouse Prize. But if I go saying that to our audience, who are readers really, I don't know how much they care, and if we don't do it in the next 5 years, do they care? Do they care about that journey? Are they invested in it?
I would say that people are more interested in the journey than people think, especially now, especially in the American market now, where there's been a lot of labor strikes in the creative fields, filmmaking. There's some stuff happening in the larger publishing scheme. Like there's even video games, like a lot of creative fields, people are getting more interested in the people behind the craft. So I would argue that you can go as big and broad as you want on that front, and just play around with have multiple different types of messaging that you play around with, and just monitor what seems to be getting picked up, and then you can tweak it. Test and learn, stuff like that. Yeah. Welcome.
I'm just curious to get any thoughts on podcasts. Are they still relevant? Are they going down a little bit? Are they good for your brand?
I would say if you can be consistent with podcasts, they are an emerging market. What's interesting is that with podcasts, even though there are a lot of podcasts out there, most of them not fail, but most of them go dark after I forget what it is, like they don't make it past 100 episodes. So if you know that you want to be a podcaster and you know you're going to do this for a long time, you can build a whole community around podcasting. A lot of creatives, because they get to know your voice, and they get to know, which is something that more written mediums, they don't get to do that. Like I have on my blog, you have a blog, they don't get to hear your voice. Video, they get to see your voice, but if you don't like the idea of your face being seen all the time, a podcast is a great, especially if you are comfortable with speaking and comfortable with editing, or you have a good podcast editor, highly recommend getting into podcasting. And don't force yourself to have any specific time limit. Just, it can be as few as 5 minutes, or it can be as long as, an hour and a half. There is a market for it, because people do have an appetite for it still, especially as people are having to go back into hybrid work situations, and they need something for the commute. So I highly recommend. I think I saw, yes.
Got a bit of a question on the personal brand thing. I think so far a lot of what we've discussed is really about how do I create a brand that is authentic to myself. But then arguably also you might want to create a marketing brand that is not 100% yourself, but a bit different, right? I just before came from a talk from where we've had Joe Abercrombie there, who is pushing a little bit the, I think, arrogance levels and the larger than life levels to create that kind of persona that might be also a bit of a distancing barrier, so that there's security if things go awry on the online space. How to do that if you want to do that? Should you do that?
If you're comfortable with the persona, then go for a persona. And I think a persona is a really good strategy if you are upfront about it. I mean, we look at artists like Chaperone, she kind of has a whole persona. Lady Gaga had a whole persona for most of her life. A lot of singers have that kind of thing. And then there's a couple of comedians on TikTok that have blown up and have gotten really good brand deals based on, really leaning into hard on a certain persona. So if you're comfortable with that, you can go with it, and you might be able to really leverage it for attracting a specific type of audience. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it's just a matter of are you comfortable with that, and is it sustainable for you to maintain that persona? Because that's a lot of mental and emotional stuff. So not against it at all. just a matter of, again, it goes back to what is sustainable for you. And then I think this will be the last question.
I have something kind of similar. So when I do sewing lessons, it's very local. You know, usually children in my community, and also my main job, I am a math tutor for children. So, and my last name is a bit hard to spell. So when I'm online, I actually have an artistic pseudonym, Claire Argent, because it's largely trying to keep, you know, one, if I'm making like cross-stitch patches that say like official space slut, keeping that separate from, you know, the kids I work with, you know, is that like having those, you know, Elizabeth Jacoby, you know, Tennessee sewing lessons, and then Claire Argent crafting, clear patches to go on your jacket, like,
If you have,
how much should I like try to be like,
if you're going towards drastically different demographics, I would recommend separating those brands.
okay.
It would be different if, like, let's say you were more of a written, like if you're an author and you have young adult and adult, it's close enough to where you could probably have separate. But in that case, where you have children and then
Yeah.
NSFW,
I don't like putting my real name on the internet in general.
yeah.
Just my LinkedIn.
Understood.
And it's largely because, my last name is Jacoby. Go ahead and try to spell that.
Yeah.
You're wrong. I'm
Right.
sorry. That's not
Right.
correct.
Yeah, I would recommend if you have a very drastic gap between the demographics, separating them.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a problem. All right, I think that's it. You guys have been great. This has been fantastic. Yeah.